Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, February 8th, and we're starting our afternoon session. And we are, looks like we're going to go through section 8 of the Vermont State Colleges. We have Catherine Lavasser on Zoom, and Sharon Scott, and Sophie, I'm sorry, the last name,
Zadatny, yes.
In the room. And who wants to go first?
I will. I'm happy to go first. So do I come sit here?
Yes, please. Yep.
I saw the name, so I wasn't sure if this was like Senator Rand.
No.
No, like no, you're sitting there, so.
That's the hot seat, that's the hot seat.
Well, welcome to Senate Institutions.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Sophie Zadatny. I'm Chancellor for the Vermont State College System. I have Sharon Scott, who's our Chief Financial and Operating Officer with me, and then Catherine, as you know, is on Zoom, and she's our Director of External and Governmental Affairs. So I know several of you are new to the committee, so I did want to just start with a very quick just sort of overview of the Vermont State College System over the past 3 years.
We like that. Thank you very much for that.
I'll try and keep it short and sweet. So
you can take as much time as you like.
Well, 3 years ago, well, let's go back 4 years ago, 2019, the Chancellor at the time of the Vermont State College System undertook a process to look at the state of the Vermont State College System in the future. And he produced a white paper, so back in 2019, just recognizing some of the trends nationally that was going on, and then some of the things that were specific to Vermont that were really challenging the Vermont State College System. So we recognized at that time that there were issues that needed to be addressed, structural issues that needed to be addressed, but when the pandemic hit, it really accelerated the sort of crisis point that we were heading towards. So instead of it being sort of out there, it was suddenly very, very close. We had no runway. And so that led to an announcement in April of 2020 of a proposal to shutter 3 of our main campuses at Johnson, Linton, and at Vermont Tech Randolph. And the legislature and the governor stepped in and said, don't do that. So there were a couple of things the state did. One was the Joint Fiscal Office asked the state treasurer to take a deep dive into our finances to just ascertain sort of what the state was. The other piece was they hired the former chancellor of the University of Maine system, Jim Page, to do an analysis as well. Based on those 2 analyses that came out, the legislature then created a select committee on the future of public higher education in Vermont. And that was made up, I believe, of around 15 people. That launched in around August of 2020. And had representatives from the Senate, from the House, from business, from the University of Vermont, VSAC, the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation, and from the Vermont State Colleges. And pretty swiftly, the committee really focused on the Vermont State Colleges because that's really where the issue was. The Joint Fiscal Office retained an outside consulting firm. They did an RFP. We had a firm coming called NCHEMS, who did a fabulous job. They're based in Colorado. They've done a lot of work with a lot of higher education systems around the country. And so they really worked closely with the committee, did a lot of stakeholder engagement, external, internal, and produced a report. And the first report came out in December of 20. Final report came out in April of 21. The main recommendations didn't really shift between the December and the April report. In February, our Board of Trustees essentially adopted the main recommendations of the Select Committee, and those were primarily bringing together 3 of our 4 institutions. So right now within the Vermont State College System, we have the Community College of Vermont, Castleton University, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College. And so one of the big recommendations was bringing together the 3 colleges other than the Community College of Vermont, so moving to having just 2 institutions in the system, and then achieving a lot of administrative consolidation, streamlining things, being more efficient, functioning as a system. One of the things that Jim Page had noted in his report was that we really functioned as a federation and didn't take full advantage of being a system. The other thing that was recognized was the importance of these communities, of these campuses, and maintaining them in their existing communities. Again, the Jim Page report, I think, was really helpful in pointing out the value of rural community institutions of higher education, that when they go away, it leaves an enormous gap in communities that, Jen and Jen has a lot of other issues So really maintaining that investment in rural campuses is critically important for states, particularly rural states like Maine and Vermont. So those were two of the key recommendations. Another one was increased legislative support for the system, which is something the legislature and the governor have been working on over the past couple of years, and for which we're very, very appreciative. And then also recognizing that the system as a whole needed to address the structural deficit that it had, and that's an ongoing process that we're working on. It was $25 million over a 5-year period, and we're working to address that. So I just wanted to share that little bit of background with you. So since that time, I mean, it's amazing that it's been 3 years, but as you likely know, the bringing together of the 3 institutions is moving forward. So we have the launch of Vermont State University scheduled for this July. The Board of Trustees has hired a new president. So we currently have President Holland Graywall, who's serving right now as the president of the 3 institutions of Castleton, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Tech, and will be the president of Vermont State University when it launches. So we are also moving forward with shared services, bringing together human resources, IT, finance. So we're going to handle those as a shared services model rather than each institution having its own separate, IT, etc. So we're making really good progress with the transformation that we're undertaking. And then part of that 25 million that I mentioned in terms of the reduction in our structural deficit is directly relevant to all of you because it's a lot to do with our capital request and then what we're going to be doing with regard to our physical campuses. And so Sharon will talk a lot more about that. So I just wanted to, again, thank you. We're very appreciative of the support we've had from the legislature over the past few years. It's been absolutely critical to us in order to be able to accomplish the transformation that we're undertaking. It's been an enormous amount of work, needless to say. We think the timeline's been challenging, but it's been important to keep making progress. So we're hitting the targets that we've set, the milestones that we've set. So it was an ambitious goal, but we are getting there. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then so one of the next slides, thank you, Catherine. We just included this if you have access to the actual PowerPoint itself, this is an article that was in Inside Higher Education in the summer. That's one of the main higher ed publications. And again, recognizing that higher education, it's very challenging to change things in higher education, but we are actually doing the change and making it happen. We do have a lot of attention nationally being paid to us right now about the changes that we're doing. Other states are wrestling with very much the same issues we are, particularly the rural education piece. And so they're really looking to see what we're doing. And I do know, President Graywall is really focused on trying to create something that will be a model for rural higher education in the country. So we have ambitious goals, and we're really hoping to achieve them and really create something that's going to be a national model for what can happen. The next slide is really just showing you our current breadth across the state. So again, we will be 2 institutions for the Vermont State College system come July, but between all the different academic centers that the Community College of Vermont has, the different campus locations that we have for Vermont State University, in addition to which Vermont Technical College has a number of learning sites, nursing sites. We have a dispersed nursing program that's in a lot of communities around the state. We also have some other things. We have a resort management program at Killington. So we're kind of spread across the state right now. And we want to maintain that. We want to maintain that physical presence, but while we're also moving to this hybrid model where students can access education remotely as well. So they were able to get the best of both worlds.
Are you okay with the question?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, please.
Are the locations that are on the, actually both of them, I guess, are those going to remain, or will there be a physical site after the combination?
Yes. So the plan is to maintain the existing campuses we have and also the existing learning sites for the nursing, because one of the thoughts is that particularly dealing with broadband issues that some folks have. So if they have a challenge being able to access programs from home, then maybe they could go to one of, a local nursing site and access it there, even if they're not a nursing student. So we're looking to maintain the physical locations as well.
Great.
Speaking of the nursing sites, we appropriated some money last year for the labs, the nursing labs, the more in-depth nursing labs, and what these labs are. I think they were $400,000 a piece.
This was for the simulator,
Yeah, the
right?
simulators. So these things are so high tech that if you make a mistake, they'll actually say ow. And so very, very neat as far as on that. Are we, with the supply chains and all that, are we making progress on those?
Yes, we've been working on that. Sharon can jump in here too, but we have been making progress on that. So the mannequins, the simulators are really critical to our students, because one of the challenges we have with the nursing program is finding clinical sites. And so the simulation labs and the mannequins that they work on, it provides really valuable experience. And again, the faculty can program them, so you can have a heart attack, a stroke, multiple things all going on, right? But we were dealing with mannequins that were very old and needed a lot of repair work, or the parts couldn't be obtained any longer, or we were driving them around the state to the different sites. So we've just been going through an RFP process. We've had nursing faculty have been checking out all the different options that are out there. And I know last time we were on the verge of placing the order, so I just going to check with Sharon.
So Sharon Scott, Chief Financial and Operating Officer, for the record. We are just about ready to place that order. I think it'll be placed probably tomorrow. We've had some last minute changes based on a conference that our nurses went to a week ago, so things got delayed just a little bit. But from a supply chain standpoint, it's actually really positive. We're looking at about a 10-week lead time from the time we place the order to when they will be in-house. And our nursing staff is over the moon with getting new simulators. They really are very excited about it. The opportunity to be able to program real life scenarios for their nurses and having simulators that will work all the time is incredibly impressive. They're really excited.
And if we get ahead of you on questions, because we will ask a lot of questions, but if we get ahead of you that you're going to cover it later, just tell us. And so we don't, hijack your presentation. How many nurses are you graduating a year?
Catherine, do you have that number?
Yes.
Yes, I do. So for the record, Catherine Lavasser, Director of External and Governmental Affairs for the system. So our nursing program is successful because of the rural locations. So you can see on the PowerPoint, we have locations in every corner of the state. The average age in that program is actually 29 to 30 years old. So often these are second career folks. They are folks that have kids, or they're providing elder care in their families, and they are going to school to become a nurse, and they're going to school to become a Vermont nurse. So we graduate about 375 nurses across all levels. So we have a stackable program where the first year they get their practical nursing certificate, leading to LPN licensure. The second year is their associate, so that leads to RN licensure. And then years 3 and 4 is an RN to bachelor's BSN bridge program. And then we also have a straight 4-year nursing program, kind of a more traditional model, similar to Norwich and UVM's model, and that's located at Castleton and Bennington. But the stackable program is the one that's located statewide. So across all of those, we're graduating about 375 a year. We've seen a significant uptick in enrollment, particularly in the RN to BSN bridge program. We've also seen every site across the state fill. So some of our sites we have wait lists for students, and some of our sites we run a not quite full cohort in a standard year. And since the legislature has been investing in nursing scholarships and in the critical occupation scholarships and in the forgivable loan programs, we've seen all of our sites fill, and there's more students pursuing the more and more advanced practice degrees in our program. And the last thing I'll just add to that is that we've also pulled some data from the Office of Professional Regulation and Department of Labor, and we've found that about 83% of our graduates license to practice in Vermont after graduating. And so, I'm sorry?
That's very nice. Very nice number to hear.
We're very excited about that. We thought it was about, 75, 80%, but to hear that it was 83 was really exciting. So we're educating nurses that stay in Vermont, they work in Vermont, they're already embedded in their communities, and we're spread out across the rural reaches of the state with hospital and clinical partners in every corner of the state. And the state's investment this year, I don't know if I've seen our nursing faculty cry before, but it was truly truly remarkable to be able to bring that news to them that we're going to be able to invest more in the program. I'll also, if I could, I'll also just plug, we just got a really remarkable earmark from Senator Leahy to continue that physical infrastructure work. And so that just came in the fiscal year 23 budget, the federal budget that was signed in December by President Biden. We just got an earmark to start expanding some additional physical infrastructure for the nursing program and open up more seats. And so we're going to be looking at our options to do that over the next couple of years. But that was also some really exciting news on the nursing program. Understanding this committee's interest in it and the investment that you made last year, I wanted to share that with you as well today.
Thank you. Very nice. Something.
Very good. If I look at our year one sheet here, is this $50 million, is that all for major maintenance in all these colleges? Broke down?
I'm not sure what number.
I don't have that sheet that you're with.
It's got 26 million for major maintenance, and it's got Randolph, Lindenville, Castle, Johnson.
So this is, I think, looking ahead for over a number of years.
That's the 10 years, so this, the administration asks us to create a 10-year.
Right, we have the 2 years are what we're looking at.
Right,
And
that's
this,
what the governor recommended.
you're right, and that's what we're looking at.
So what amount do you reserve out of your budget for major maintenance?
I'm gonna let.
We reserve right now approximately $2 million for major maintenance internally and fund that with our own resources. And then in addition, we're in the process and have started doing this starting last year of pursuing external grants to help us with other facilities related activities so that we can make sure that we are doing what we can to address the infrastructure of the Vermont State Colleges. So as Catherine just noted, part of that is pursuing things like the federal earmarks that we just received from Senator Leahy's through the 23 budget for the federal government.
How much is that lady?
6.3 million.
6.3 million.
What will we use that for?
That will be used on our nursing sites.
To expand the infrastructure, so we can, right now, we're kind of constrained in terms of the number of students we can serve. So this is also to help build out the infrastructure for the nursing program.
One of the concerns I've had over the years is that major maintenance is not gonna get easier, it's gonna get worse.
Right.
You know, what you were putting in versus relying on the state of Vermont for major maintenance. So you say you put 2 million or 20%?
Approximately $2 million.
$2 million.
Let me switch, why don't we come to, we're moving over to Sharon today.
Thank you.
Just so I understand, is that going to be doable in the future? Are you projecting 2 million a year, or how is that gonna work? Because one of the big things that it's always an issue is major maintenance, whether it's UVM or whoever it is. I just want to know what your plan is versus our plan.
Absolutely. So the issue for major maintenance, obviously, is that it's going to continue to grow. It's a never-ending bottomless pit, as we all know, of expenses related to the work that we're doing. What the Vermont State Colleges is really starting to look at is how do we address that through a combination of increasing expenditures on major maintenance, but also really looking at divesting of resources that are costing us too much to operate. So Catherine, if you could go to the 4th slide, please. From a facilities perspective, we last year completed a study with an external firm that helped us understand a few things about our environment. The first was how well utilized our existing facilities. What we learned, honestly, is that for our academic spaces between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, only 30% of our spaces are in use. That's a stunning number, particularly when you compare that to peer institutions of our size, type, and rural nature, where we should be at approximately 65%. Now, you never want to be at 100%, and that's because you always want to have a little room in classrooms to be able to move people around from one room to the next. A faculty member may not like a space, maybe you have too many students in a classroom, maybe there's an accessibility issue in a room, but 65% is about the norm. What we recognize then is that the Vermont State Colleges is over-resourced. We have 2 million square feet, and we have too much square footage. And that's something that we have to address because every square foot that you own is square footage that we have to maintain. And that becomes an issue for us as we move down the road. We also undertook looking at the condition of our facilities and understanding what our facilities are. And we know that today, if we were to maintain our facilities properly, we would need to spend approximately $9.6 million annually. That is not going to be possible within the existing confines of our budget. Today, we're spending close to 3 to 4 million of that, and most of that is coming from state capital. What that leads us to believe then is that we are going to need to divest ourselves of resources through a combination of public-private partnerships, leasing spaces, selling buildings, and also looking at the possibility of demolishing a building if that building is in such poor condition and it can't be used. That would allow us to be able to generate new revenue. It would allow us to reduce our ongoing expenses and reduce those ongoing major maintenance related costs. But it would also allow us to really make our spaces feel more energized and more well used. And when I say that, when I look at a room and the room can hold 35 people and you have 10 people in it, you feel like you're kind of wondering why you're there. When you're in a room of 35 and you have 30 people in the room, it feels exciting. When you're in a room of 35 and you have 50 people in the room, you think it's too small. And so what we're looking for is how do we right size our facilities in order to be able to address what we're doing. And then to be able to look at that, that tells us we really need to be able to resize and reshape the size of our campuses. And by doing so, we're expecting that we need to reduce our costs by about 25 to 30%. And that'll require us to do square footage reductions somewhere in that 25 to 35% range.
Who's helping you make those evaluations as far as which buildings that you should get rid of and not?
So we actually launched on January 31st an RFP for a facilities master planner who will help us work on understanding the nuances of our own institution, working with the strategic plan, the mission, the vision, the academic affairs that we have now, and then also looking at the data that we've already collected regarding space utilization, building conditions and assessments, and helping to pull that together with us to be able to help bring forward which buildings are the best ones to look at, which are the right ones for us to be able to move forward. And Catherine, if you could go to slide number 6, please. So when we look at our facilities, this becomes a really important question, how we go ahead and take a look at this. This first column, the column on the left, tells us today about the condition of our buildings and how risky they are. A high-risk building is one that's likely to have a catastrophic failure or to have a major issue anytime within the next 3 to 5 years. So it could be because of age, it could be because of condition, et cetera. And the situation that we're in right now is that about 60% of our buildings are in that high-risk category. Well, why is it only 60%? So normally we would think there'd be about 25% in every category. Really exceptional, really low risk, medium risk, higher risk, very high risk. Well, about 12 years ago, the Vermont State Colleges invested $75 million of its own money through bonding into major renovations of the campus facilities. Well, now the bill is coming due. Those buildings are now 10 years old. As we move forward in another 5 years, when we look at that in the second column, we move from a 60% high risk population to a 66% high risk population. And that only gets worse as we move out over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So when we look at the divestment opportunities, this comes into the question of the master planner. What activities do we have them look at? Well, there's a few different ways we can look at it. We want to look at it, the condition of the buildings. We want to look at the use of those buildings, the age. How does it affect the operation of the institution? A very historical building that's very old, maybe one that we want to keep because it's central to the mission of the university. But a very old building that is not well used and it is in really poor condition, maybe that's a building that we want to get rid of. The third column here is one way to look at divestment. If we took 25% of the population of our buildings away across all of our campus locations without regard to age or condition, we could actually move that high-risk population in 5 years from being a 66% high risk to being about 61% high risk. The last column, column number 4, looks at it in a very different way. It says, what if you took out all of the buildings, or only the buildings that are the highest risk, those that are in the worst repair, those that are in the worst condition? What if we take those out? How does that affect the risk calculation? And well, when you do that, it comes out to say that instead of a 66% risk population, we're looking at about a 46% risk population. Now, it's probably somewhere in the middle. And that's where the master planners help us understand what's there. Because if we take out every building that is the highest risk or the greatest in age, we could be eliminating some of the buildings that are most central to our campus locations. On the other hand, we can't do it without regard to age and condition, because we also have to keep in mind, just as you're saying, Senator, how are we going to maintain these buildings moving forward? So we need to be able to look at what that looks like.
And I can imagine that you've said that you took out a $75 million bond. I know that when we do that in institutions, when we bond for buildings, and we bond, that's what we do. But when we sell a building, we have to retain the monies within the institutions. But there's some payback sometimes too. If you put this amount of money in this building, and you just can't get rid of this building sometimes. Sometimes you have to retain it, and so you must be running into that a little bit.
Absolutely. So we have that situation with our own money, but also with the state's own capital dollars.
Right.
So you've invested in the Vermont State Colleges in our ability to be able to upgrade our facilities and handle major maintenance and do other activities. So we keep very close track of which buildings those are and where those
So
funds
some
are.
buildings are just going to be off limits. I
Some
mean, there's
buildings
just
are
not
off
a lot you can do with it.
There is a process that we can follow. We work with the administration and with the treasurer's office to understand whether the bond situation can be ameliorated or not. It may result in us needing to pay back that portion of the bond to the treasurer's office, and then them working with their bond counsel and with your funders to be able to address that. And each individual situation is unique because it obviously depends on which bond year that was, which set of bond cycles it was in. But there is a process that we can follow with the treasurer's office and the administration to take those actions. That being said, for the most part, what we're trying to do right now is make sure that we are not working on facilities that have significant amounts of state capital in them, because that is a risk for us as well. But those are all things that we have to consider. Other things that we have to consider is some of our buildings have some stipulations on them. Some were donated. Generally, those are buildings on the periphery of our campuses. Maybe it's a farm that someone donated, or it might be a building. Generally, they're not our institutional buildings. They're generally smaller things. And if we were to divest ourselves of those, there might be things that we have to do in relationship to that as well. But in terms of looking at what the next steps are, Catherine, if you could skip forward to slide number 8, please. Where this gets into talking about where those inputs come in, and there are required inputs. Our Finance and Facilities Committee of our Board of Trustees has a significant input process. They, as the Finance Committee for our board, are the fiduciaries for the corporation, and so they have a significant responsibility to evaluate and help us understand what that looks like. The Treasurer's Office has a significant amount of work to do with us if we were to divest of something that used state capital. And then we also have our own bonds through the Municipal Bond Bank. And so the Municipal Bond Bank has some work to do. We would have some work to do with there. So there's required steps along the way that we look at that. But in terms of the overall master plan, that master plan will help guide us in terms of what do we divest, where, which buildings, and how do we look at that.
Who makes the decision that you can sell?
The Board of Trustees ultimately makes that decision.
So 2 questions. Were there any campuses that you completely closed?
No campuses that we completely closed, and we have no plans at this point or ever in the future to close any.
That's great. And I'm sure that makes the students happier.
And
I
they
would think.
Well, and I think it makes the communities happier, and that's where it
Yeah.
was, Senator, where they had really plans to close down some facilities, and they had a lot of pushback from the legislature and from the communities as well. And so I think that's why we got to the decision of where you're at right now, not to close any facilities, but to manage better, to tighten up ways of to make them functional.
Good, well, thank you.
Go ahead.
It's a different question, so if you want to follow
I'm
up on
just
that.
I'm just glad to hear you're on that. I've been asking these questions for years about major maintenance because you never, but the way I'm hearing today is you're going to like not downsize, but kind of fit the space for the students because major maintenance is a big issue. And for years, we haven't heard what you're saying today. I think it's great what you're saying today because you'll never catch up on some of this major maintenance if you keep it, you don't, it's very costly. And when you got a list of 50 million, 10 years, whatever it is, it's only going to grow because cost of repairing is greater than ever.
Right.
Every time you let a bid out, it used to be 3 million, now it's 5 million. So I'm glad to hear you're thinking about, utilizing the space properly and downsizing, so to speak. Your enrollment is about the same from year to year.
Our enrollment has been about the same from year to year. Putting that into context, though, nationally, institutions of our type have seen a decline year over year for the last 3 years, about 4% each year. Our being able to maintain relatively flat enrollment or with very modest growth is remarkable nationally. Their institutions of higher learning are just not seeing that. And a lot of that comes back to the legislature and the support that you have provided to the Vermont State Colleges. Funding of the critical occupation scholarships, workforce development, your support for nursing programs, and your direct support of the Vermont State Colleges has really helped.
Am I correct in saying that places like Vermont Tech is used more because I hear more people want to go into trades? A lot of high school students are thinking about that. Do you see any enrollment increase at Vermont Tech? Because they're pushing, high schools are promoting the fact that not everybody wants to go to college or they want a trade, which is very good these days, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatever you think about.
Right.
So I didn't know if that was increasing. Do you think that's going to grow at all?
I do think that there's plenty of room for growth there. We actually are seeing in the last year, Catherine can confirm this, but very significant growth in our plumbing and electrical apprenticeships programs.
Yeah.
Largely because of a shift to allowing students to take much of their coursework online. And rather than having to drive into an academic center, really helps to be able to keep people in those programs and keep them all the way to the finish line, which is remarkable. And because of the nursing scholarships that you've offered, we've really seen at Vermont Tech especially tremendous uptake in the nursing programs at Vermont Tech.
That's great. What other, so very good to hear about the nursing. I mean, very good to hear that you guys are starting to target areas that the market demands more people to be in that space. What other areas are you excited about that that you guys are willing to tackle and ready to tackle?
Yeah, pass that one over to Sophie. One of the things that's really, really exciting at Vermont Tech, again, thanks to Senator Leahy, but a significant congressional, well, actually it was through the Department of Defense, but we have an advanced manufacturing center at the Randolph campus. And if any of you have an opportunity to go to a tour there, I'd really encourage it. So it's state-of-the-art advanced manufacturing.
We have two tours right here, so don't be surprised.
Yeah, no, it's amazing when you go. So, and that's really, because Vermont, surprisingly, right, has a lot of manufacturing, and people don't think of that with Vermont. It's because we don't have the sort of the dirty, dangerous stuff. We have the really sort of cutting-edge new stuff. And this center is phenomenal. So it has all the latest. So a lot of places, a lot of employers are coming. One, to test out the equipment. Is this something they want to invest in? Ask running prototypes. So Burton, when I was there doing a tour last time, they were saying Burton had a new snowboard boot that they were interested in and that they'd come to have sort of checked out at the center to see if it had any flaws and stuff in the production of it. So there's some really exciting stuff happening with that. And again, it is funded with assistance through the Department of Defense. So the Army comes and does training and stuff there as well. So there's some really innovative and interesting things. The challenge is finding the students, right? So we have a lot of capacity, I think, and it would be great if we could get more students interested in those engineering courses and manufacturing courses. So any support we can provide for that, I think, is going to be critical as well.
Am I wrong to think that you have taken these
specific areas, communities and colleges, and try not to be one all in each facility, but start to specialize in each little different areas.
So what the plan is for Vermont State University is we've had our faculty have done extraordinary work over the past couple of years in looking at their program. So for example, business, each of the three institutions had their own business program. So the business faculty have come together to redesign what will the new business program look like. Same for education. We had very different education programs. So they came together, how do we do this? So there will be some programs that obviously are accessible at every site. There will be others, like some of the manufacturing ones that are very, lab intensive, that would be more based in a particular setting. But the goal is really to expand opportunities for students. So you might have a student at Castleton that would be interested in doing an engineering course that could either do a semester away at the Randolph campus, or again, opening things up evenings, weekends, so that people can get the hands-on experience at other times. So really trying to be as creative as we can to make sure students can access the programs from wherever they are and what works for them.
So you might have one student going to different campuses and at different times of the year for specific courses or what have you.
Right. So there'd certainly be that sort of seamless transition around. The structure for the new university will have 5 different schools within it. So again, those are going to be cross-campus schools, but there will be, and that's part of the work that's going on right now with the new president, is he's working with the campus communities to really understand the vision for each particular campus. Because, again, if you could be a business major at any one campus, why might you want to go to the Johnson campus versus going to the Castleton campus, right? So what makes each campus special, and really trying to focus on that as well, so that people find the place that's the best fit for them. So to your point, there are some campuses that will have things, that others don't. So if you are very big on athletics, maybe you want to go, Castleton has like a football team, right? UVM doesn't have a football, Castleton has a football team.
Right.
So maybe you would want to be, if that's important to you, maybe then you would pick the Castleton campus for that. Some of the fine arts and stuff, you could look at Johnson. Atmospheric sciences, you could look at Linden. So again, there are different programs, that are sort of specialized at the different locations, but the goal is really to try to make the programs as accessible as possible for students, regardless of where they are, because so many of our students, are non-traditional and are working or got kids, and they really need that flexibility around the programming. And I think, again, one of the hidden benefits of the pandemic was really enabling people that I think would have been very skeptical. Again, the plumbing and electrical apprenticeships are a really good example. I don't think anyone would have thought, I bet we could get more plumbers and electricians if we made this available remotely. And you know what? It's worked, and we did this big experiment because we had to. And it turns out that for coursework, they would much rather be able to have the flexibility to do those courses online than having to physically go somewhere to do them. So I think the pandemic has given everyone an opportunity to sort of rethink things in a way that they wouldn't have thought was possible or realistic before. So we're really trying, accessibility is really key and affordability is really key.
It sounds like it's more, as much as anything, is you're willing to transition to what you need to do to be successful, and that's very positive to hear. This is my 3rd year in the Senate, and this is a vastly, as Senator Mazet said, it's a vastly different presentation than what we've seen in the past, and it seems like you're having some successes, and glad to hear that. So it's nothing worse than to have people come in and just hear the doom and gloom, and people unwilling to change, to find a way to make it work. So money is everything. It's nice to get the money, it's nice to get funding, but you also have to have a plan. And sounds like you have a plan.
Has a brick stopped falling off the building at Johnson yet?
I'll let Sharon answer that one.
Not since you were there.
I've been hearing that for the last 20 years, a brick falling off the building at Johnson. I hope we stopped it by now.
We stopped.
We stopped, good.
Hopefully not, because they all
That's
fell
funny,
off.
it's funny because it has been an issue over the years.
It was a great story but it's probably time to retire that one.
That's fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about CCV. I'm from Windham County, and just north of Windham County, Windsor County, there's just a wonderful facility that's a joint in Springfield the CCB facility there. So that's great. Some of the other CCB offices are not as well equipped. And has the integration between the 2-year degree and the 4-year degree, is that easier now that you're becoming one organization, or you have become one
So
organization?
definitely, I mean, so we already have a lot of articulated pathways. I mean, Catherine kind of referenced on the nursing is a 1+1+2, and it starts the first year as a CCB. And where we see the most success for CCB students transitioning into the other institutions is where there are those really clearly defined pathways. So when they're at CCB, they know if you take these courses, they're all going to transfer seamlessly. They're all going to count towards your major. You finish up here. So right now for CCB on the facilities end, what's really interesting is even prior to the pandemic, CCB was seeing a shift to online courses. So they would each semester, and again, because of their student population, they're really putting out their course schedule, winter, fall, spring, and summer. And so they would put out sections that are in person and remote. And gradually over the years, the remote courses fill up, the online courses fill up, and the in-person ones don't. Obviously, with the pandemic, they shifted fully to being online. Post-pandemic, there are probably about 80% of their courses is being delivered remotely right now.
Really?
And they're not seeing people wanting to go back into the classroom. So they will be thinking about what their facilities look like, but they have a much more flexible model. So they only own, I believe, three of their buildings. The others, they lease space, they're co-located with some of our institutions like Vermont Tech down in Brattleboro, at St. Albans, they're co-located, so there's some co-location. But that's something they're going to be looking at is, do they need as much space as they have? Do they maintain a site but on a smaller footprint?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, people speak with their feet, so
Right.
people have these sense of, oh, no, these kinds of students, they don't want that. And it's like, well, they're choosing to go do that. So,
Right.
yeah.
And you've done a lot of 3 years. And then regarding divesting yourself of the buildings, is there a point in the process where you can evaluate if a building would be helpful for housing, would be suitable for housing?
Yes, absolutely. So as part of the master planning process itself, one of the things that we'll be doing is engaging with the public and engaging with other entities to help understand what might these facilities that we're considering be used for. Is it appropriate for housing? Would it be appropriate for a health facility? If we look at our communities, particularly the communities where our Vermont State Colleges are located, Randolph, Johnson, Linden, there's a dearth of housing, as we all know, but also of access to healthcare and other activities. So absolutely, that's a part of it.
Great.
We are engaging with potential partners now already. So we have people who have come to us and engaged with us in trying to identify if there are things that we can use our facilities for, and we will talk to anyone now. It doesn't have to wait for the master plan to be complete. Certainly it helps for the master plan to be complete because then we understand the entirety of the picture. But we are starting talking to people now.
Great, thank you.
Any endowments? There must be some people that have done well that have left and feel they want to give back. Do you have a good endowment?
We have a reasonably sized endowment. It's a little smaller at the moment, as all of our portfolios are, just given the way that the market is at the moment. But we do have a good sized endowment. Our endowed funds, though, are used almost exclusively for scholarships for students.
Okay.
The individuals who donate to us and create endowments are typically looking for an opportunity to give back. And the best way that they see to give back is to give a helping hand to a student behind them. And so we recently had a wonderful gift from a woman who just donated more than $1 million, her entirety of her estate, to Vermont Tech's nursing program. So we're very excited about that. and that will have a wonderful assistance to future nursing students. And the reason that she donated it to us is that one of her nurses was a graduate of Vermont Technical's nursing program. So it's a wonderful, it was a really wonderful story.
And there's demand for nurses too.
Yeah, it really is.
We have those visiting nurses in Chittenden County. They pay tons of money and they have to provide housing and like $100 an hour. It's crazy.
It's remarkable. It's remarkably crazy. So
We actually provided some housing on the Vermont Tech Randolph campus for visiting nurses
Yeah, they're all over, I
for
guess.
last year. I wanted just to follow up on the housing piece. I mean, that's something we definitely are considering really carefully. The challenge again is a lot of our buildings are older, they're not accessible, we don't have elevators, we have communal bathrooms, so we've had people come and look and it's like, yeah, it'd probably be cheaper to like tear it down and then build something else. So we're open to, having the conversation, but I don't want to get anyone's hopes up too much that it would be an easy thing to do. We do have right now at Johnson, we have, I believe it's between 70 and 75 international students that are working at Smuggler's Notch. They have students that come from the Southern Hemisphere, over the summer, come up here and then work at Smugglers, and they're being housed at the Johnson campus. So we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can on those opportunities when they arise.
That's great.
BCHB or anything like that, can they be part of that? Gus Selig's crew.
So we have engaged with BCHB in the past. As Sophie notes, the challenge for BCHB in the past has been just the construction of our buildings. They're built on a central core. They're all concrete. The communal restrooms, no kitchen facilities on the floors or related to it. That being said, we are more than happy to continue to talk with them.
But that's not unlike a lot of the project that they're in. I mean, they're doing some right now. They're involved in one in Newport with the old Catholic high school. And and we certainly, they're sitting on $100 million plus looking for another $50 million more. So they certainly have the funds to go into these places that are harder to get private capital to come in and make it turn. So I wonder if we could find some way to help you engage with that, but just kind of thinking out loud. And I don't know whether it's within the realms of this committee, but we certainly know people in this building that can have those conversations.
Well, we would be delighted to continue those conversations. If that makes sense, it would be our pleasure to do so.
There could be some real synergy too, because again, we have programs on social work programs, mental health counseling programs. I mean, we have programs that students can be getting, doing internships or whatever and getting hands-on experience working in particular areas as well. So that there could be some really good synergy.
Well, it's just it'd be kind of nice. I think Senator Harrison has something to say about it, but it'd be kind of nice to see something that we're all kind of working together, trying to figure all these problems that we have in the state out. And we have problems everywhere we look, and hopefully we're solving most of them or putting a good attempt into it. So when you have the amount of buildings that you have, which are 121 buildings, and you're trying to liquidate 70% of them or whatever that number might be, we have housing stock right there that isn't. It might be dysfunctional for housing, but there's certainly buildings that are being heated and all of that, and probably not in the worst repair of some of these other projects that they're taking on. So committee members, the ones that are involved with housing, it might not be a bad idea to try to get your other committees interested in some of this.
Right, no, definitely not. So what I was just gonna mention is we're looking at other models too, not just traditional housing, but also co-housing and shared housing and all sorts of things. So, yeah, it'd be nice. It's the Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs Committee.
Well, we would be delighted to continue conversations if that makes sense, and happy to be able to do so. We are really looking for all opportunities to transform the Vermont State Colleges. As you know, Senator Mazza, this is very different than the way the Vermont State Colleges has ever operated, and we're glad that you noticed that we're showing.
That was really a breath of fresh air because I listened to the testimony for many years. I think they're on the right track now. It's exciting to hear. I think it's good that the new name is good. I mean, state colleges now, whatever, it's a different name. I think.
Vermont State University.
Yeah, not State University. I think that.
I personally really like that it's Vermont. So, I think it's Vermont
Tech's
State
always been
University.
a real favorite because I see so many talented folks who come out of there with a good education. I got a couple of students that work for me. They're going to go to Vermont Tech because they want to learn a trade because they know there's a good future in trades today. It's not all because not everybody wants to go to college, like I said, but they figure that the trades are offering all kinds of salaries out there. It's going to come for years to come because the older folks are not going into the. I mean, they're trying to get some newcomers come in, the carpenters, mechanics for cars, or whatever it is. Vermont Tech has been a good one.
Also want to caution you, looks like your $10 million is coming from the cash fund. The one-time general fund, cash fund, and there's $62 million of that, and it's unprotected money. It isn't like it's bonded dollars where it's, where it's at. So we're gonna try to hang on to that as best we can, and keep that to you. And these other committee members will do the best we can do to keep the other committees' fingers off of that money. So that could change a little bit, but I just want you guys to know that I think you have already heard that we're pretty happy with what we're hearing today, and I hope that you guys keep it up. Is there anything else? We got off your slide presentation, but I don't think that's a bad idea. But is there anything else that you want to tell us today?
No, so the only remainder of our slide deck was really to talk about the ask, and we're happy to postpone that to a different time, if that makes sense for you. You're right, the governor's recommend of $10 million is coming from the cash fund. We made a request to the governor of 12.2 million, so slightly different than that. And the distribution is a little bit different in terms of where the governor's recommend is relative to major maintenance, and then transformation, and then the Vail project on the Linden campus. But we're happy to talk about that at a different time. And we're really actually grateful that you pull us a little bit off the slide deck, because it's better when it's an actual conversation.
Okay. Okay, Mindy. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I was not in the legislature. I was a citizen on the sidelines cheering you on, because when I heard campuses were going to be closed, that I just reacted so viscerally. I have no ties to any of the colleges, but just from the macro perspective of this cannot be healthy for Vermont. Thank you for stepping up, Chancellor. I think you made a huge difference. You also are an Essex resident.
I
have
am.
to reveal that. She's not in my district. But I'm just so delighted to see the progress, and just so proud of all of you for hanging in there and making this work. This, as you said, it's just unheard of that an educational system can remake itself.
And it's
I
not
just
easy.
want-
And
I can't imagine
and I
how
do want to
difficult it
say,
is.
recognize just how incredibly hard, our faculty and staff have been working on this. And it's just not easy. I mean, again, the pandemic's made everybody very uncertain and anxious, and then having this on top of it. So it's not easy, because it does take a human toll on everyone. And we do recognize that it's what needs to be done, but it's not easy to do.
Well,
People
thanks for
don't
your
like
leadership.
change.
That,
Well, thank you.
it starts at the top, right? So thank you for everything that all of you are doing.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We really
Yes.
appreciate it.
Coming in. Good luck.
You been to the house yet?
We have been to the house. We've actually been to the house twice now so far. This morning was our second time. So,
Good luck.
thank you so much. We'll see you
Appreciate you
again.
coming in. Do you, anyone take a 5-minute break?